And
All right, well, we're going to get started. Hilton, are you excited?
I couldn't be more excited, Catherine.
Me too.
More excited.
We were just giving everybody a few minutes because our first session ran over just a little bit. So we'll just give everybody a couple seconds, but I don't know if you got to watch any of Mark's session.
I did, and I think it's important for those people coming over that they recognize that Canada Post is actually bringing Canadians into the session. So if my accent and Mark Pollard's accent sound remarkably similar, I'm going to tell you I'm coming to you from the Beaches neighborhood in Toronto. So don't let the accent fool you. I'm as Canadian as everyone else that's dialing into the session this afternoon.
That you are, Hilton, that's for sure. We'll just give it a couple of more seconds. I think we're just still waiting for a few more people to join us. I don't know, I know you got the box. Did you enjoy any lovely snacks as of yet? I haven't cracked these little candies open yet, but was gonna.
To be honest, the box arrived, I think like many things with at-home delivery, it arrived in a swarm of locusts, which is the term of endearment I have for my children, attacked and tore it open. So by the time that I got to see the scattered remnants in our front yard, there was some pieces of paper and I could kind of make out an amped up logo. But everything else, the candy bar, the crayons, all of that stuff had disappeared in a milieu of my locusts.
I've heard that with a few of my colleagues who have the same issue. I'm kind of lucky that way because, you know, my cats don't really eat chocolate or, you know, chocolate bars, so I get to eat them myself.
Well, the fantastic thing, from the introductory conversation was you guys are going to provide an alternate address for us to send materials to. So I'm actually going to give you my next door neighbor's address.
Okay.
I'm going to send chocolate and wine and I don't know, flowers, all of those sorts of things after this. Or obviously, if any of the attendees want to share those things with me as well, you can send them to my next door neighbor's address.
Yeah.
There's a small chance they'll get through.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, I'm just trying to see. I think we've got a few people that have joined, so maybe we can get started. Hilton, sorry, I'm just checking from my crew here what's happening. All right. So we've got a few people that have joined, and I know a few more will join. So I think what I'll do, Hilton, is just start off with some of our tech notes, just in case people are just joining us for the first time. And then I'll do a little introduction, so that'll buy a bit of time. So, you know, more people will come and join us for this awesome session.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. Me too, Hilton. All right. So just before we get started, welcome everybody. I know there's a few people. Our first session went a bit late. Mark was very interesting to watch, but I also know that our next speaker is equally as interesting and also has a really cool accent that is not Australian. And I will not redo my horrible Australian accent impersonation from earlier. So a couple things just, of course, before we get started and I pass it over to Hilton, just wanted to remind you about a few key housekeeping notes. So if you're experiencing any technical difficulties at all, just refresh your browser or your page. Make sure your volume and your headsets are properly plugged in if there's any issues there. If you are having any further issues, you can also just go down to the bottom of the page where there is an email address that you can get some further support. And also you can just click the CC button at the bottom of the video screen for closed captioning. Also as well, we will be, I think we might have time for Q&A. I think we'll see how it goes, Hilton, but if we do, we're gonna be using the Slido, which is on the side of your screen, as you can see. They'll be open at the same time as the Zoom. So you can participate through your phone by scanning the barcode for the breakout session on the breakout session webpage, my apologies, or by typing app.sli.do into your phone's internet browser and then enter the code that's on this webpage. Okay, so now we've got these housekeeping notes taken care of. And I'm super excited to introduce our speaker. And I just want to start it off by saying he also has an article that he wrote for our Insight magazine. This one we don't have available on our booth right now, but I will upload it for next week. So this is our annual issue. So it's a really great article, and I'm sure some of the great stuff he's going to be talking about today are covered in that as well. So one thing I know about Hilton is that over his 20 plus year career, that its culture is among the most powerful and least utilized assets available to help grow a business. He's got a background in marketing and communication strategy and has a firm belief that organizations succeed when they consider strategy and culture as one instead of separate disciplines. If strategy is the engine for business, culture is the fuel. I love that line. Having worked with some of the world's leading Fortune 100 companies and startups, Hilton brings a unique perspective to help organizations flourish. And in this session today, Hilton is going to provide you with a better understanding of what culture is, which is not beanbags and foosball tables, apparently, although I kind of enjoy that personally, but we'll see what he has to say about that. He's also going to talk to us about how culture creates differentiation and how you as a marketer can influence culture. So enough of my babbling. I can't wait to pass it over to Hilton. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. So a couple of housekeeping notes from me. Firstly, I'm coming to you from Toronto, and the fact that my accent may sound remarkably like Mark Pollard's is not a disguise. I'm actually from South Africa. So if there's an alarming similarity, he's the Australian, I'm the South African. So to Catherine's point, if any of you are looking for that copy of Insight, I have about 300 or 400 in my basement. So if you want to email me directly after the session, I will happily sign them and autograph them and ship them to you. And I'm sure Canada Post will bring this to your house immediately. So I wanted to talk about why culture is a competitive advantage, and particularly in the time that we're facing. There's nobody here with a marketing background who doesn't believe that we really are at the sharp end of what organizations are looking for. There's probably two parts of any organization right now that are under extreme pressure. If you're in supply chain management, that's probably one part. But if you're in marketing, you're also facing a slew of issues that you are having to face head on based on this pandemic and how we've been asked to react. Obviously, if you're like me, you probably get 300 or 400 emails a day from the good people at McKinsey and Bain and BCG, giving you expert advice on how to get through the pandemic. This particular slide is taken from a 200-page McKinsey report called How to Speed Up Decision-Making Inside Your Organization. And I thought that's fantastic, but I don't have time to read 230 pages. Thank you, good people at McKinsey. In truth, I think many of us are feeling this, a real significant sense of exhaustion. And that is as true for us as it is for the customers that we serve, and obviously the partners that are part of the ecosystem that we participate in. And I'm going to suggest that the one thing that we're missing, the one opportunity, the golden opportunity perhaps that marketing folks are missing, is culture. And the truth of the matter is, and Catherine referenced it earlier, is I think we've got and remain to have the same or the wrong lens on culture. This wonderful image taken from Mad Men obviously reflects what all of us wish with the culture inside our organization. And who doesn't like a conga line at 4 o'clock on a Friday, or foosball tables, or vegan muffins, or open plan offices? Remember those open plan offices that you would commute to? Well, I will say to you that those are not culture, that those are actually offsets or offshoots of your culture. But time and again, sadly, we've conflated that for culture. Where the truth of the matter is, culture is a business driver. And there's perhaps no better example than this fine gentleman, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see a wonderful cartoon that was released during the Steve Ballmer days at Microsoft, where they said, what is the culture inside various technology organizations? And the one with Microsoft has each internal side of the organization literally with guns out, shooting their colleagues and compatriots at Microsoft. What a wonderful environment you can imagine to work in. However, if you look at the stock price on the right-hand side, the red circle is when Satya Nadella took over Microsoft. And I think for anybody on this call who has Microsoft stock, they probably sit together gleefully rubbing their hands together to show what the Microsoft stock has done since he has taken over. At the core of it, and he has a wonderful book out called Hit Refresh, but time and time again, Satya Nadella talks about culture and the notion of a growth mindset as being at the heart of what has changed inside Microsoft, from an organization that would take pot shots at each other, figuratively and literally, to something that is one of the fastest growing stocks of the last 5 years. And I think for every Canadian, you can remember this moment a few years ago when a Brazilian private equity firm, 3G, came in and bought one of the most storied franchise brands in the country. And I think if any of us can remember that time, I would suggest that much of those problems were related to the culture clash between a private equity firm and how their culture seeks profit at all times, and a quick service restaurant known to be a cornerstone of every Canadian community and small town. And I think we've all remembered the social media flurry and the fact that Tim Hortons actually dropped 50 places in the Leisure brand standings. And I would suggest that was based on culture. So what exactly is culture then, if it isn't foosball tables, vegan muffins, and conga lines? Well, often people will use this definition, which I think is pretty good. How people act, behave, and make decisions to fit in an organization. And consider your own self for a moment and think about how you act and how you behave and how you make decisions based on the organization you work for today. And I would suggest that is one way of considering your culture. This phenomenal quote came to me from a recent interview I did, which I thought was a remarkable way of thinking about culture at this time during the pandemic. How the edges of your organization act on your worst day. And for those that are on the phone and watching this that are in QSR or retail, I would ask you, did you know how the edges of your organization would act? How the frontline staff packing shelves or delivering goods to the houses of your customers? Did you know exactly how they were doing that? Was that the best representation of your brand? The brand that you as a marketer have created, invested time, sweat, weekends to build? I think this is a wonderful way of thinking about your culture and a wonderful question to ask yourself about your culture too. So if that isn't culture, what is your culture? Well, I would suggest to you your culture is actually an organism, a living, breathing organism. Culture, as a friend has said to me, is where the humans gather in business. The humans gather in business, in every business, across Canada today and across the world. And they think about how they act and behave. And they consider the pros and cons. Do I put my hand up and interrupt my CEO who's saying the wrong thing and is going to get us hitting an iceberg? Or do I sit quietly and shuffle off to my desk and do something else? The pros and cons is one aspect of our culture. And we can't be surprised that our culture is somewhat skeptical, because 6 months ago, we released a brand new strategy. It had a wonderful new PowerPoint template. It had all sorts of amazing logos on it. And it had all sorts of brilliance that said, this is the strategy by which we will win. And at March break, a pandemic shut down Canada. And suddenly, that entire strategy was up for grabs. And we can't be surprised in the midst of everything that's going on. Job insecurity, what's going on financially with the economy, we can't be surprised that the humans inside our organizations are skeptical, are nervous, are anxious about what they need to do and what is the right way to move forward. And I think for anyone who sits in the executive team, this is what they want. We want the full commitment of our culture. We want the financial commitment of our culture, and we do that by paying people. We want the intellectual commitment of our culture, and we do that by giving people interesting tasks. But what we often want most of all, and struggle the hardest to get, is the emotional culture of our people, the emotional commitment, the commitment where they take on the survival of the company as a personal crusade. What we often get is their apathy. The "not now, I'm busy. That's not my task. Speak to Susie in accounting. I'll get to that after the 22 Zoom calls I have today." We don't get the commitment of our culture. We often get its apathy. And we can't be surprised, because time and again we treat our culture like an American tourist in a French taxi cab. The very first time we give them directions, it's at a modulated tone. But by the third time that we've tried to talk to them, all we've done is raise our voices and shout at them, because we presume, like the French taxi cab driver, our culture is just too stupid and too ignorant and too lazy to actually commit to what we want. So we cannot be surprised that we get their apathy when we treat them like that. In short, what else would we expect if we did that? But I would suggest to you that culture really is your only sustainable competitive advantage. For those of us who've had a 25 or so year career, who grew up on the 4 Ps, I would suggest that price, product, promotion, and place are Ps that can be rapidly copied, stolen, mimicked, overtaken, outspent. Your culture, though, your culture is the only thing that cannot be copied. There is no culture like yours. There is no business that has your history, that has your background, that has your processes, that makes the decisions you make. Your culture, your people are really your only sustainable competitive advantage. And as marketers, that's what we're always looking for, sustainable competitive advantage. So why should marketers lead? Why should the black sheep of the family be the ones that lead the flock to the promised land? Why indeed? I have 7 reasons why I think that marketing should be at the forefront of culture and culture development in our organizations. Number 7, for obvious reasons, is communication. There is nobody better suited to communicate inside an organization than marketing. And there is an element of culture building and culture nurturing that requires communication, requires clarity of communication, requires frequency of communication, requires micro-targeting of select audiences. Sound familiar? Communication would be reason number 7 I would give. Number 6 is purpose. And I can appreciate that the purpose word has taken a bit of a hammering in the last 2 years, and that many of us have perhaps been accused of purpose washing. And that's probably legitimate. But I would suggest the same vigor and enthusiasm that we thought purpose could bring people to our brand. Purpose brings people to our business as well. People want to work at a company that's making an impact, that has a positive impact on society. They want to go home with pride and tell their family and friends, I work for a great organization that cares for me, that takes care of my talent, that lets me thrive and succeed. So purpose, that area that marketing does so well, is another reason we should be involved in culture. Truth of the matter is, who else gets behavior change like marketers? Who else understands the levers to pull to connect with an audience, to change behavior, to get people to commit? Is there any part of your organization who doesn't understand this intimately like marketing does? And particularly now, who doesn't understand emotion as a driver of behavior like marketing? If we look at the world and if we extend beyond our living room, where you can see me now in Toronto, outside is a hot emotional mess of consumers and customers and colleagues looking for someone who understands them and who will create a safe environment for them, a place where they can bring their talent and their potential. And who doesn't get that more or better than the folks in marketing? This is one I always put in for my daughter because she has a weird obsession with Commander Snow. But I think the reality is often culture exercises, and I say with due respect and love for our friends in human resources, often feels like an exercise in indoctrination, that we campaign our way through culture, that we put up pithy logos and slogans and coffee mugs and t-shirts with all sorts of wonderful words that often can feel more like indoctrination than inspiration. And again, the question I pose to you is, who better than marketing to inspire the people around you? Marketing does that every single day. That is what we do. That is what we all get up for in the morning, is to inspire. And that is what our colleagues require, and that is what our culture does. The second last thing I would say is, again, focus on the possibilities of your people and not bash them to death with policy, which is often the reality of what happens inside a culture. We tell them what they cannot do instead of create and paint a picture of what is feasible, what is possible. That, again, is something that marketing can do. And the final reason I would give, and one that is close to the hearts of everyone on this call, I would suggest to you, if you cannot sell it out, you cannot sell it outside. If you cannot sell it inside first. If you cannot get the full emotional commitment of your people, of your colleagues, of your R&D, of your new product development, if you can't get their full and unrequited commitment, how the hell do you think you're going to get the commitment, love, loyalty, and admiration of your customers? Lou Gerstner said it best, the man who turned around IBM. Culture isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game. And this is a man who should know. So I would say, and I leave you with this, culture is the engine of everything you're trying to achieve and everything your business needs right now. And I would love to take your questions.
That was awesome, Hilton. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Some really interesting key points. I really love a couple of your analogies or comments when you said like marketing's being led to, what is it, the flocking to the, being led to the promised land. I thought that was really good.
Absolutely.
Kind of feels like that sometimes.
As it should.
Exactly.
And who like to be the black sheep, let's be honest. Didn't Mark talk about that just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, he did. I was just going to remind people too, we maybe have time for about 1 or 2 questions if you have any for Hilton. So just make sure that you type it into the Slido screen beside you or on your mobile if you're using that. And then we'll see it pop up and we'll see if we have a minute or 2 to show any of those. I did have one for you though, Hilton, while we're waiting to see if anybody else, I'll hog up the time, I guess, if nobody does ask any questions. But
Please do.
yeah, one of the things that you were talking about was a commitment of culture from the organization's perspective. And I know one of the big things that people talk about a lot now, especially probably since COVID, is all around the wellness aspect of, so what is your thoughts around how wellness and maybe mindfulness relate to culture in an organization?
Well, wellness and, let's be honest, mental health of our people. What is the net outcome of them being fully brought to work, their full talents, their full abilities? It strikes me as somewhat bizarre that at a time when people are being crushed by 20 Zoom calls in one day, we wouldn't say to them, we need you to rest. We need you to recuperate. We need your brain to turn off for a minute. That to me is a basic fundamental thing. We wouldn't run our machinery on our plant 24 hours a day without giving that an opportunity to get some recuperation. Why do we think our humans are any better at doing that than the machines that we've bought? So I think it's a critical part of an organization's commitment back to its people.
And do you have any idea, or thoughts or opinions, if you can, around organizations that are doing culture really well?
There's a couple. There's obviously two great Canadian examples I always use. One is WestJet, an organization afflicted at one of the toughest times in their business. And if, like me, you've seen people furloughed or leaving that organization, and time and again, their goodbye note to the organization is, thank you. Thank you for the time I spent becoming a WestJetter. Can you think of an organization where you say thank you when they put you on furlough? The other great example would be Four Seasons, a homegrown, brilliant example of just a magnificent culture that's gone global. And in the hotel industry is certainly seen as a gold standard. WestJet, Four Seasons, two magnificent Canadian examples.
That's awesome. I've actually heard that about both of those organizations before. So thank you, Hilton. I mean, I'm so sad. Our time seemed to fly by way too fast today.
That's
but
okay.
You're back next week.
I am indeed. Trailer of forthcoming attractions.
That's right. So return back for the sequel of Hilton Barber.
Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanks, Hilton. And just a really quick thing for everybody, if you want to go back to the descriptions of the breakout sessions, you can find the breakout sessions button at the bottom of the page. You just have to click on there. You can go back to the descriptions and then choose the next breakout session from there. So hopefully we'll see a few of you there. And Hilton, once again, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.